Coming up on Sports Tonight, ouch, an ugly day in Pittsburgh. The Browns get a serious reality check in the form of a 38-7 beatdown by the Steelers.
Bottom line, got beat. Credit to them. Didn't do anything right.
The voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, is here with his take on the loss and what this means in the AFC North.
I would say there's a pretty good gap between the Ravens and Steelers and then the Browns.
Hey, it's one game, but it wasn't pretty. Take your shoes off. Stay a while. Sports Tonight starts now.
Mayfield throws, it's picked off at the 30-yard line. Down the sideline they come, and going into the end zone, a touchdown. And on first down and 10, he takes the snap, he pump fakes, throwing down the right sideline, wide open, Washington, touchdown. They give it to Snell, he goes off the left side and in for a touchdown. He got right through Mack Wilson on the left side, and he goes in for a touchdown. And the beat, or in this case the beating, goes on.
Well, not the game we were hoping for today earlier in Pittsburgh. It was bad and it was ugly. Welcome into Sports Tonight. Glad you could be with us, and we're going to try our best to make sense of what happened at Heinz Field today, which brings us to our game of the day. It is brought to you by Brunswick Auto Mart. Car buying made truly simple. Not good. A lot of us hoping for a different result in Pittsburgh, but it was the same old story. 17 straight losses to the Steelers now at Heinz Field. The Browns getting crushed today, 38-7. At one point, it was 24-0 in the first half, and it never got better. Coach Stefanski, he was pretty blunt following the loss.
Bottom line, got beat. Credit to them. Didn't do anything right, obviously. Offensively, couldn't sustain drives, couldn't get a first down on third or fourth down. And but again, credit to them. The guys fought, and then we got to learn from this and move on, because you got another one next week.
Well, it's times like these where we need Jim Donovan to help us understand what we saw out there, what the heck happened out there, and what Jim called out on the field on the radio side of things. Let's check in with the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan.
Well, friends, the Browns, I guess, were not ready for the big time after all. And certainly on this day, and certainly in a place that you have to play exceptionally well, maybe your best game of the year if you're going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And early and often, the Browns displayed that they couldn't come up with that kind of an effort. You cannot turn the ball over, and right away, they turned the ball over in a pick six. And it led to a long day, a black and blue bruising day for Baker Mayfield and a lot of other Browns, and a day where their ego took a shot after a 4-game winning streak as the Steelers dominate them. Final score, 38-7.
With any loss, you can't let it linger. You learn from it and you move on. And we'll watch the tape tomorrow. We'll have everybody in. We'll watch it. What can we learn from it, and then move on? That's just the simple answer. But I just think you can't dwell on these things. The next one's coming.
In a season like this, you got to find ways to adjust, and a lot of time what's working, you continue with it until it's not working. And then you find ways to, make it better or adjust. And I think that's the, phase that we're in right now. But, we all need to look at the film and be critical of ourselves and take this on the chin and move on to the next one. It's still a long season. Still a lot of games left.
Everything fell apart in this game. The strength of the Browns so far in the early part of the year was the play of their offensive line. They dominated the opposition. They got dominated on this day. The Browns' defense has bent but not broken a lot during this season, but it was broken all day long, and Big Ben Roethlisberger just did really whatever Big Ben wanted to do. He's done that since he's come into the NFL against the Browns. He's really ticked we didn't draft him. So the Browns in the AFC North, I would say there's a pretty good gap between the Ravens and Steelers and then the Browns. And the Browns have to pull it all together, and that might be tough to do. They are so beaten up both physically and I would imagine mentally after a day at Heinz Field. But next week they go to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals and Joe Burrow. But on this day, well, forget this day. 38-7 Steelers. I'm Jim Donovan, Channel 3 Sports.
Oh, great stuff as always, Jimmy. The Steelers continuing to dominate the Browns. The Steelers have won 17 in a row at home over the Browns. Look at Big Ben's career record against Cleveland, 24-2-1. And the Steelers are 5-0 for the first time since the days of the Steel Curtain. Pretty amazing. All right, our play of the day brought to you by Union Home Mortgage. Unfortunately, this really set the tone for the entire game. Minkah Fitzpatrick with the pick six for the Steelers. Baker Mayfield throwing 2 interceptions today, and this one really hurt. It gave Pittsburgh that early 10-0 lead, and they never really looked back. You know, speaking of Baker Mayfield, just a tough game for the Browns quarterback. Didn't practice much this week. He was slowed with those sore ribs, and it honestly looked like it out there today. Now, Coach Kevin Stefanski made it clear that Baker is his starting quarterback unless he's really injured, but he is the starter. We saw Case Keenum come into this game, but let's bring in the Baker line. The Browns quarterback finishing just 10 of 18 through the air for 119 yards. He threw 1 touchdown, but had 2 picks. As I said, sacked 4 times. Not the type of game that Baker envisioned, I don't think.
We're all very frustrated. We want to win. We don't come out here just to get stats and do all that. We come out here to win. So it's a frustrating loss for us, knowing that we just didn't play well and let a great team capitalize on all those mistakes that we made. So we're all frustrated.
Well, stop me if you've heard this before. A little sideline drama from Odell Beckham Jr. The TV cameras just love this guy, right? But in the fourth quarter, it's just another scene. OBJ is throwing the helmet down, watching the game on the sidelines in his socks. He had no shoes on. Yikes. Well, for the first time since last year's brawl here in Cleveland, Myles Garrett faced the Pittsburgh Steelers. Would there be any extracurricular activity, any dirty sort of plays? I would say for the most part it was a pretty clean game. Garrett did have 1 sack, which gives him 5 straight games with at least 1 sack. But he was double and triple teamed at different points throughout the game, so it made it tough for him to really get to the quarterback. I thought the Steelers did a nice job on him, but here's the Browns' defensive end following the game.
It's one game. You team again, and then you'll be able to measure how we stack up against either of them. But until then, I'll just leave it as it is. I think they had our number. We got a game plan, adjust, and come back, and we'll be at full strength by then.
Our player of the day is brought to you by Mr. Hero. We hate to do it, but we have to. It's Steelers running back James Conner. He's a great story. The former Pitt Panther rushing for over 100 yards and a touchdown. The Steelers really establishing that ground attack, and it ultimately helped them control the football game.
Yeah, it felt like turn around and had Jerome Bettis 20 times in the second half. But, hey, whatever you got to do to win a football game. I thought James ran the ball well in the second half. Benny Snell coming in there doing some things. And the line really created openings for him.
So is it time to panic, or was today just one game? We asked Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak that question. His answer and much more next.
The great thing about the NFL is you play next Sunday, and you have a chance to get right, and winning cures all, and that's kind of the goal for us, is to take it 1 week at a time, and this counts as 1 loss, and we'll move forward, and we don't want to make it turn into Steel.
Well, we are now joined by Scott Petrak from the Chronicle Telegram, longtime Browns beat writer. And Scott, every part of me wants to sit here and say, well, it was just one game, and when you look at the Browns' record after 6 games, they're still 4-2, but that was pretty bad out there today. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how bad it looked, Scott. I mean, again, it's one game, but were you surprised with how ugly it got out there in Pittsburgh?
I was, Nick. I mean, I picked the Steelers to win, but I thought it was going to be a close game. The Browns' offense had been so effective the last 4 weeks in that winning streak that I thought they'd be able to move the ball, and they really weren't all day long. And you're right that it's only one game, but I think what adds magnitude to it is it's the same type of loss that they had to the Ravens in week 1. And when you see those back-to-back, or not back-to-back, but when you combine them, you start to think maybe the 4-game streak was a bit of a mirage, and you see that they're clearly not at the top of the AFC North.
Yeah, when you look at these games that they've had against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, it's clear, Scott. I mean, you've got those two teams at the top, right? And then it's Cleveland followed by Cincinnati. But I mean, right now, there's really no argument. It's those top two teams up there, right?
Yeah, I don't know how you could say anything different after these, after those two losses, Nick. These defeats are so decisive, and we all know the history of the Ravens and the history of the Steelers and the history of the Browns. So until the Browns prove otherwise, they're going to be that third team in the division, and it's not going to change. And I don't think anybody's thinking it's going to change until the Browns go out and beat both those teams.
All right, here in Cleveland, Scott, and you covering the Browns as long as you have, you'll understand what I'm doing here. This is a disclaimer. We're not starting a quarterback controversy, okay, Scott and I.
Okay.
The one thing I will ask, though, Case Keenum comes in at the end of the third quarter. What did you make of that move, Scott?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it made sense because Baker had the sore ribs and then took the pounding that he did, and the game was obviously out of hand. I don't think – if Baker were completely healthy, I don't think Kevin Stefanski makes that move because he doesn't want to answer questions about who's going to be a starter next week or anything like that. But given all the factors, it just made sense.
Next up for the Browns, they go to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals, a familiar opponent. We saw them play already earlier this season. Scott, doesn't it feel like a familiar feeling coming off the Ravens loss and then going into that game feeling like you had to win? Now it's the Steelers loss. Kind of feels like, I don't want to say must win at this type of juncture, but really want to try to pick up a W down in Cincy.
Well, I think the Browns can take some solace in the fact that the rebound after the Ravens game did come against the Bengals. So it's the same situation. You go down to Cincinnati, you expect to win. We've done it before. But I do think it adds pressure because Baker said you can't let one loss turn into two. You can't let it landslide. And that's what would happen if they lose to a Cincinnati team that's not very good, that has a rookie quarterback, that has issues across the roster. If the Browns lost that game, then I think we would really doubt the improvement that they've made.
Scott, always appreciate the time. Great stuff.
Thanks, Nick.
Our Sports Flashback brought to you by Northeast Factory Direct. Great furniture, great prices. The last time the Browns won in Pittsburgh, 17 years ago, a 33-13 drubbing of Tommy Maddox and the Steelers. It's the only time the Browns have won a game at Heinz Field. They've been playing there since 2001. I was hoping that could have changed today, but we wait. The Browns head to Cincinnati next week. The Bengals were up 21-0 earlier today, but managed to blow it against the Colts. Find out what happened. Our very own Pat Chiesa has the AFC North rundown next.
Whenever you can jump out to a lead with the defense, especially like we have, it just gives you a little bit of breathing room. We knew this is a really good defense that we were facing coming in. So when you kind of get to that point and get a lead on them, that helps because they're a team that has played with the lead a lot this year.
Big Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers, they are still the kings of the AFC North division this season. But as Pat Chiesa reminds us, they have not run away with this division just yet. Pat?
Well, Nick, we entered the day with 3 4-win teams all jostling for that top spot in the AFC North. The Browns, as we know, took a major step back, but that other divisional rival they lost to earlier this season, they just keep on pushing forward in a major way. John Harbaugh and the 4-1 Ravens visiting Philly in the third quarter. Hey, why hand it off to the running back when you've got this guy? Lamar Jackson scampers 37 yards to pay dirt. Close finish, but the Ravens swallow up Philly's 2-point conversion attempt here to secure the 30-28 win. They're on a bye next week. Then the Steelers come to town for a huge showdown in Week 8. Checking in on the Browns' next opponent, the Bengals visiting the Colts. Great start for Cincy. Look at this. Joe Mixon punches it in from 7 yards out to give the Bengals a 21-0 lead in the second. But Phil Rivers and the Colts come all the way back. Rivers drops an absolute dime to Jack Doyle to tie the game here. Indy goes on top with the extra point and sneaks out the W, 31-27. The Bengals fail to win on the road for the 17th straight game.
Obviously, you'd like to win when you're up 21-0 in the first quarter, and then we score 6 points the rest of the game. It's not great, but we got 10 more.
So that means the two teams in the division coming off deflating losses will square off next Sunday when the Browns head to Paul Brown Stadium to take on the Bengals. For 3 Sports, I'm Pat Chiesa.
Great stuff, Pat. Well, it was the biggest win in school history. How did Medina pull off an incredible upset of St. Ed's in the playoffs? Stick around. Time for our high school football play of the week, Medina versus St. Ed's. How about Medina quarterback Drew Aller finds Luke Hensley for the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter. And how about the Bees? They shocked the four-time state champs 35-31. And up next, a date with St. Ed's arch rival St. Ignatius on Friday. That is tough. Congrats to Medina, though. Next Saturday at noon in Columbus, the Ohio State Buckeyes kick off the 2020 college football season against Nebraska. Game will be at the Shoe. Fans will be there. I had a chance to see some college teams this year. You think about Alabama, Clemson, those are great teams. But you got to believe Ohio State is going to be right there. They're itching to go.
Most of it's been torture. I mean, just not being able to play in games and watching these games has been really hard. There has been a part of it that I've actually enjoyed. But for the most part, it's been hard. And I just want to be playing, just want to get these guys on the field and get rolling.
Cannot wait for Ohio State football. The Buckeyes a 24-point favorite next week against Nebraska. That's going to do it this week for Sports Tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night, a great week, and stay safe out there.